Alright Ryca fans, this is part 2 of the RR-1 build video. If you're going to run the side mount plate, you're going to want to run the wiring up the side of the frame rail. You're going to do that with an 11/64 drill bit. You're going to drill 4 small holes along the side frame rail in order to attach the zip ties as shown in the next images. And this allows you to run the wiring up the left side of the bike. Otherwise, you're going to use the included stick-on wiring wire ties to run them on the underside of the fender up into the oil can. So here you can see the wire ties mounted to the frame rails in order to route the wiring. Now, when you mount the fender in position on the threaded rods, go ahead and stick it in place. You may want to bend these rods up. It depends what size tires you use. And as you can see here, the rods poke through the inside of the fender and tighten down with washers and then lock nuts. Here, next shot, we got the fender struts in position with the 1/4-inch Allen head bolts. Okay, you want to, before you drill the fender out, put your new axle that we included with the kit and your wheel in position before you mount your fender and drill your fender. We'll get to that in a second. Next, you're going to go ahead and replace the belt sprocket with the new chain drive pulley. The chain drive pulley goes with the original 6 bolts. Just go ahead and take those off and replace with the new sprocket. Slide your new Ryca axle through the outer adjustment sleeves and through the original spacer on the left. I've powder coated it black, but yours will be silver. Slide it through that, through the wheel, through the other brake drum and out the right-hand side, and then insert the Ryca spacer that we include with the kit. It will be black. And through the metal adjustment sleeve. Make sure to add the oversized washers before you tighten the 2 nuts down on the axle as well. And here's a shot of the oversized washer I was talking about. You want to add these on both sides as well as the new lock nuts. We can torque them at the very end. You don't want to tighten these down. You're going to want to torque everything at the very end, but I'm just showing you for reference, tightening it down a little bit. Now, once your wheel and tires in position, you can get your fender height at the right position and make sure it lines up with the radius of the tire. And then you can go ahead and mark your fender, as I've shown in this next image, and drill it with a 1/4-inch drill bit. Now, when you drill these, you want to step up the drill bit sizes up to a 1/4-inch. Don't just start with a 1/4-inch. Make sure you start with a smaller bit and work your way up. It's really important when you're working with sheet metal. And then you go ahead and attach it from the inside with a 1/4-inch Allen head and the oversized washers included. And here it is in position with the wheel removed again and the lower and upper fender mounts in position. Once the lower mount is in the correct radius with the tire, you can go ahead and cut off the excess threaded rod. Now, we make them long in order to use different tire sizes, and we definitely recommend the larger 150/90 tire that we include. If you're not going to use the side mount plate, you're going to want to disassemble the original brake light, and you may want to bend that to a 90-degree angle, the bracket itself, as shown here in this image, if you want to mount it to the top of the fender. This will allow you to mount the license plate flat with the fender, and then the tail light centered on the fender. As shown here, I've bent it down with a hammer. It's a super easy bend. It just takes a little bit of time, and I've bent it down on a vise. Just clamp it in and bend it down with a hammer, gently banging it. It'll bend to a 90-degree pretty simply. And then if you want to mount that to the rear of the fender instead of the side mount, go ahead and drill those 3 holes out with a 1/4-inch drill bit. You'll need to drill a hole for the wires to run through the fender and use the included stick-on wire ties as well to run the wiring for the brake light if you do the rear mount. And the seat will mount to the front with M8x16 bolts, and the rear underneath will be M8x20. So the front M8x16, rear M8x20s with washers. So here I'm putting the rear of the seat in position with the M8x20s and washers, left and right side both. Just get those finger tight at first, and make sure you use Loctite on all these threads. This bike vibrates a lot, and you want to make sure you use Loctite. Blue Loctite works pretty well. And here in the front, I'm mounting the M8x16. So the rear of the seat, M8x20, and the front of the seat, M8x16. These are all hex head. And you're going to want to use the washers as well. Once you get them all finger tight in position, you can go ahead and tighten them down. As we mentioned earlier, extending or shortening the wires to the battery and to the starter solenoid, the ground wire and the starter solenoid wire. Here's the battery. We're going to go ahead and put that in position, and I've included a tender on mine. It's a nice option, so you can charge your battery when your bike's sitting. Go ahead and mount the brake or the battery strap as shown. This is just a reference shot of the battery strap going over the battery and then velcroing on top. So here's the strap in position over and under the threaded rods. And then that space in the middle is where you're going to stick the battery. So pull the strap back, put the battery in position, and then pop the strap back over. Now these next shots, we're going to be mounting the optional chain tensioner. Now notice the direction of the spring. The optional chain tensioner helps with chain slap quite a bit. This is a shot of the chain tensioner in position with the chain on. Now this is a nice option. So you're going to want to, whether or not you do that, replace the front pulley with the sprocket. It's a 32 millimeter bolt. Go ahead and take that nut off with an impact gun. Once you've taken off the original pulley, here's the shaft. You're going to go ahead and slide the sprocket on, but not the chain yet, and attach the included stainless steel spacer to the outside, and then tighten it down with the nut. Make sure you use lots of Loctite on this if you don't use the original washer. So spacer and then nut. Go ahead and tighten that down. This is the optional chain tensioner that we offer. Notice the spring direction. It springs towards the back. You would take a straight edge and run it from the front sprocket back to the rear sprocket, and then across the middle. So here's the front sprocket with the straight edge across the middle tensioner to the rear sprocket. And this is to make sure that they're all in alignment before you drill the battery tray. So here's it going across the rear sprocket. And here's a shot from the back real quick of the straight edge so you get an idea of what I'm doing. I'm basically making sure they line up. And in the middle here now, once it lines up with that middle tensioner, you're going to drill these two holes through the battery tray in the right position. Once again, make sure you notice the right spring direction. So here's me holding the tensioner in place. Once the tensioner is in place, I can go ahead and mark that with like a metal scribe, and hold it in position. Notice the spring. This is the correct direction. And then mark those two holes on the battery tray. And you're going to drill those out with a 10 millimeter or 3/8 bit. Now, once again, whenever you're drilling sheet metal in the fender or in the battery tray, use a small bit. Start at a really small bit and work your way up to the larger bit. Once you've drilled those two holes, you're going to attach the included tensioner bracket. This helps the tensioner with torque, so it gives it extra strength on the battery tray. And you're going to put the included hardware up through the bottom of the battery tray and attach it to the top with the lock nuts that are included. Make sure you use Loctite on that as well. Now, because we offer different gear ratios of chain for these models, we include just one chain. We include a 120 tooth chain. Now for the bobber, you're going to want to shorten it to 116, and at 72 inches on the tape measure, that's about the right length. But make sure you count out 116 links. Now here on the chain, I'm showing with a Sharpie that I'm going to mark it in the middle, and you're going to cut this with a die grinder or a Dremel tool. You can use the 4.5 inch, and I've cut it here as you see, and I grind down the top. And you can also grind the pin down a little bit in order to remove it, and then you can go ahead and pop that out. Now, once you wrap the chain around the sprockets and it's in position, you're going to go ahead and attach the chain with the included end link. Now, the end link slides through the back, like as shown here, and then you put the front piece on the chain and then attach it with the clip. The C-clip goes in position as shown here in this next image, and then you can use a pair of needle nose or pliers to pop it into place. This next shot shows it popped into place. So once you put the chain on, you can go ahead and readjust your rear wheel. Make sure you didn't torque your axle down. Make sure your rear wheel is aligned perfectly. And once it's all aligned correctly, then you can go ahead and torque the axle in place. Once you've done that, you can hook up the rear brake linkage as shown here, stock. Make sure the brake arm is kicked forward a little bit, like this shot shows here. And then the fuel line that we have included, you go ahead and attach that. You might want to put it on first, test fit it, but you can use the stock clamps, or you can get, tighten up hose clamps also if you want. But the stock clamps work fine. Notice the standard petcock will actually face in the rear-facing position. If you want one that is has fuel on/off on the bottom, we also offer an upgraded petcock that won't face to the inside of the bike. And make sure you watch the carburetor jetting videos as well to properly jet your carburetor for the bobber. and then attach the fuel line with the clamp to the petcock, and remembering the vacuum cap that goes on the carburetor. Run the fuel line through behind the carburetor as shown here, and then to the input on the to the carburetor. Now, to attach the exhaust, you're going to want to grab the bracket that we include, and you're going to need the spacer and the nut and the original swing arm nut and bolt. You're going to want to drill out the bottom hole in the bracket to 1/2 inch. I use a step bit. It makes this easy. But either way, just drill it to 1/2 inch so it fits. Slide the original swing arm bolt through the swing arm position. Now, this is the bolt for the swing arm. Obviously, swing arm's gone, so you slide the bolt through the left side and have it come out through the right side, put the bracket into place, the included spacer with the kit, and tighten it up with the nut. Now, at this point, you're going to want to put on the side caps. The side caps, I recommend lightly greasing the inside lip to make them easy to put on and off. And then go ahead and stick on your side caps and put those in position. Once the side caps are in position, you can mount the exhaust. Now, here's how the exhaust is going to mount to that bracket. So you can leave the bracket a little bit loose while you're positioning the exhaust. Take the included header with the kit. Here's the chromed header that goes with the kit, and attach it into place on the bike with the original exhaust bracket, and then tighten up the clamp on the exhaust and then the bolt to the bracket on the bike. So this basically put it in position. I usually take a step back and make sure it's all positioned right, left to right, up and down before I tighten everything up. And on this bike, I'm going to actually apply the header wrap. The exhaust gets pretty hot where your legs are, so not a bad idea to actually use the header wrap. The header wrap, I go ahead and put it in position before I cut it. Now, we sell this also as an option on our website. If you're going to apply the header wrap, make sure you get it really wet before you do. It makes it easier to tighten up. And then take the stainless straps. You stick them through the ends and then bend them back and cut them off. Here they're bent back, and then you just go ahead and cut them off with your die grinder or some snips. Then take a step back, make sure it's repositioned and everything's in position and everything's good. Once the exhaust is in place and the side caps are on, you can go over to the other side and put the sprocket cover, the original sprocket cover, back on. And now you can tighten up the belt guard. The belt guard tightens up with the M6 on the front and then the 3/8 on the back. Now, the 3/8 on the back mount is actually a 5/16. It's one of the only standard pieces of hardware on the bike. That tightens right here. You go ahead and tighten that up with your 5/16 Allen head. And on the front, you're going to use an M6 by 10 Allen head bolt and an oversized washer to mount that to this position here on the original frame mounts. You want to check the other videos if you're going to be installing gauges or anything of the sort. If you're going to install the gauges on the bobber, the difference is the gauge bracket mounts to the top of the trees instead of the bottoms, so it's easier to see. As you can see here, the gauge bracket mounts there, and we offer single gauges and dual gauges available too. And duplicolor touch-up paint works really well to touch up the frames on these bikes. So once again, you can reference the other videos, the bobber video, the build video for the CS1 for handlebar mounting and for gauge mounting and that sort of thing. But it's a pretty simple install. You won't have any trouble with that. And that's about it. Just make sure you tighten everything to torque after you ride the bike for a while, including the seat hinge bolts. The front seat hinge bolts, you want to make sure you use Loctite on those and retighten those after you ride for a little bit. They can wiggle loose after the first couple rides. And just make sure you retighten everything, your axle and all your important bolts to torque specs after you ride for the first time, making sure everything's tight. And make sure you watch the fork lowering video in order to lower the front forks as well. And that's about it. Stay tuned for more.